Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Not Your Average Josh back here for another movie review, and today I'm reviewing the new movie coming out this weekend, The Boogeyman, directed by Rob Savage. But before I get into my movie review, I do want to say if you're watching this, hit that like button if you enjoy this video, and also leave a comment down below if you have any thoughts on this movie or anything else you want to put down there. Also hit that subscribe button as well if this is your first time watching any of my videos, or if you're a returning viewer as well. Any support for this channel is always very much appreciated. You can also follow me on TikTok and add me on Snapchat, where I will post content similar to this. But for the most part, my content will be here on this YouTube channel, Not Your Average Josh. Let's go ahead and get into this review of The Boogeyman. As I mentioned, this was directed by Rob Savage, and I believe that this is, if not his first, one of his first full-length feature films. I believe he has done a couple of short movies, horror films also. And for the most part, I did enjoy my experience with this movie. But I will say the first half of this movie was significantly better for me than the second half was. I went to go see this with my friend tonight. It was a little bit of an early screening, about a day early at the AMC theater. And we both had pretty much the same feeling on this afterwards. We kind of talked on the ride home from this movie. I thought the way they built tension in this movie, really through the whole thing, not even just the first half of this movie, was very well done. Like, all the technical aspects of this movie, not really much to critique here. Like, just on the filmmaking aspect, the cinematography, the way they would film these moments with this creature that is in this movie, the Boogeyman, as if it isn't obvious. Definitely built a lot of tension, especially before you really get to see the physical appearance of the creature that is in this movie. The tension is very much there. There was a couple of times where me and my friend jumped out of our seat a little bit with some of the jump scares in this movie that I thought were all pretty effective for the most part, particularly near the beginning. But I will say where this movie started to wane on me a little bit, where it started to become a little bit of a negative, was the repetitiveness of this movie. I feel after a while, it does start to turn into a series of just, oh, where's this monster going to be? He's in the dark somewhere. He's going to come out at some point. Like, the movie did just start to feel like a series of the monster's going to come out at some point and fucking scare you. And the jump scares did get a little bit, I'd say, basic or just a little bit tiring. I feel as the movie went on, the scary factor that was at the beginning of this movie just started to lower and lower as this movie went on, if that makes sense. I was definitely way more tense and a little bit afraid near the beginning of this movie. But once you start to, again, see more of the creature and see his actual physical appearance, that's when I actually started to just like, oh, this creature isn't actually as scary. This Boogeyman creature of sorts isn't as scary as the movie was making it out to be, I guess you will say. I think that's where this movie really excels the most at, is the sound effects and the camera work. In some of these shots, they definitely really just put you in whatever room in the house this creature is stalking certain family members. Yeah, it definitely got me at certain points in this movie, but I will say, again, as the movie really goes on, my engagement and my fear level definitely lowered and lowered. And by the end of the movie, I don't want to say I was disappointed or anything, but I just wasn't on the same level I was like through the first half of this movie. I was like, oh man, this is a pretty genuinely scary movie. But I just thought, once you're introduced to the actual character, what the character looks like, it didn't hit me as much as it did near the beginning of this movie. And also, I will say, with the story of this movie, the writing was, I guess, fine overall, but the characters of this movie, I just really didn't care about. Like, our main characters, you have this family. Chris Messina is in this movie as the father. I thought he did a really good job here. You have the daughter, played by Sophie Thatcher, Sadie Harper. Those two are really the main two characters involved in this movie, along with the younger daughter and sister. Vivian Lyra Blair as Sawyer Harper, who was, if you do recognize her, in the Obi-Wan series recently. They're really the three main people involved at the center of this movie, where the Boogeyman is pretty much stalking them. And I will say it is a pretty basic premise here with the monster. And of course, the Boogeyman in and of itself is kind of a basic idea at this point. It's just, I feel like it's been used over and over again. I mean, even in the Halloween movies, you have people referring to Michael Myers as the Boogeyman. And it's pretty cool with the lore and all of that. And I was very interested going into this movie with that. But this movie does just kind of turn into a basic monster movie as you go on with this. There really isn't much to attach to the monster, like any specific lore with him in this movie that separates itself from any other movie that might have a Boogeyman like a creature involved. I definitely got vibes of Insidious in this movie, the movie Lights Out as well. A lot of that, where this creature is very much thrives in the dark. And anytime you have any light going on, he goes away and hides. But in the end, this monster just wasn't really that memorable for me by the end of it. And then once you do see this creature, one of the biggest problems with me of this Boogeyman monster was the fact that it definitely looked very CGI to me. Like, you could easily tell, like, as soon as they showed any type of full shot of the monster, it just felt so artificial. And that is one of the main reasons that really just took me out of being scared of the monster. Like, at that point, I was just like, oh, I'm kind of checked out in a way, or just the believability factor, the suspension of disbelief that I need for this was kind of taken away. And unfortunately, that's just kind of where I was left with this movie by the end of it. I think the acting overall is very fine. I think there are just moments, again, this probably goes to some of the maybe issues a little bit with the writing, where it's just character moves in this movie that you've seen plenty of time, countless times in horror movies that characters make in this, where you're like, why would anyone go to that house, or why would anyone stay in this room and not have fucking lights on? Like, after a while in this movie, you're like, okay, obviously this monster thrives in the dark. He fucking obviously can imitate voices where it seems like characters don't catch on to. And it's just moments like that in this movie where you're like, okay, like, how are these characters like so dumb? They don't seem like they're just dumbass people, like, but they're making dumb character choices in this movie that just kind of reflects the writing a little bit there. But again, overall, I thought the acting and the writing was fine, I guess, by the end of it. It's not anything too egregious or anything throughout this movie, but there were just moments throughout where it's like, okay, I've seen that before in other horror movies, or, yeah, of course that's going to happen. Why the fuck did your character do that stupid shit? And one thing I'll also say is, man, in a lot of, especially you see it in horror movies, these people, like, they're already going through tough shit. Of course, there's a death that happened before this movie started within the family. The mom passed away. And so you already have this grief level that you're feeling with. And that is definitely a common theme in a lot of horror movies, grief and monsters feeding on people's grief. I didn't have an issue with that. But you have the daughter is dealing with this grief, and then she's hanging out with these friends that treat her like shit. The only reason why she's hanging out with them is because she has this one friend that is in this friend group that she's been friends with forever now. And obviously all these other friends, including the main girl, Maddie Nichols as Natalie, I believe, is the main blonde girl in this friend group, who is just egregiously bitchy in this movie, like over the top, like whatever the worst girl you think of in high school, she was that in this movie. And I feel like so many times in these horror movies, they have these fucking teenage characters that are just so over the top mean and shit. And then you have Sophie Thatcher's character just completely continuing to hang out with them and invite them over when the already crazy shit's been happening at the house. You have an event that takes place near the beginning of this movie that causes even more unrest in the house. And it's like, why the fuck are you even hanging out with them anymore? It's just moments like that in this movie that really takes you out, especially when you go to near the end of this movie. I just wasn't as scared anymore once you see the creature more. This movie maybe could have done a better job if they just actually didn't show the monster as much as they do in this second and third act of this movie. And I thought that's where it just took me out a little bit here. And then just her with her friends, it's like, it's just annoying when characters make stupid decisions where you're like, come on, why would anyone do that? Why would you still hang out with these people? Why would you go to this certain room when you know shit's going on? Why would you go to this fucking house? There's this crazy lady at this point in this movie who has been involved with the monster before her family was affected by it. She continues to go back to this house where you're like, obviously bad shit's gonna happen. There's just many moments like that in this movie where you're just like, you're laughing at moments that is unintentionally funny, where they weren't trying to be. It's just like, you're like, why are they doing this? And that's where a lot of my enjoyment for this movie was really brought down to a level where it could have been, like I said, the first half of this movie, I was really enjoying it. I was really into it, really enthralled at certain times. But then again, the fact that from the beginning, I don't really care about the characters very much. I was just more invested in the tone, the atmosphere, the actual what this monster could be. That's all I was really in on. And then so when I'm not in on the actual characters, then once you get to the second half of the movie and the monster is not as impressive, maybe not as intimidating, you don't have those characters to fall back on that you're invested in. So then the movie just kind of like, it was pretty nice. Like, that's really kind of my main feeling at the end of it. David Dastmalchian makes an appearance in this movie. I thought it was really nice to see him in this. Overall, on a technical level, I thought it was a nice job, well done for the most part for Rob Savage. I think it would be interesting to see him do other things. I would love to see him do not just horror movies, but anything else he might want to expand on. But where it falters is with the writing, with the character development in this movie, not really having much investment in them for me personally. And then just, I think they made a little bit maybe of a misstep in revealing the monster a little bit too much. And then having characters make decisions along the way that kind of brought you even more out of likability you might have for them. And then there's just a moment, like I'd say maybe a little bit over halfway in this movie, where I was like, okay, this is a clear way that you should try and attack and kill this monster if you can, but they never do it until the very end of the movie. And when they finally try to attempt this, I'm like, well, yeah, why didn't you fucking do that like 30 minutes ago in this movie? I don't want to sound too negative about this movie. I did really overall enjoy my time with it. It is a movie, though, that I don't really ever see myself really jumping to return to viewing with. So I thought it was still a nice entry for a horror movie. I just thought that there's a lot left on the table here that they really, if they had done better, this movie could have excelled even more. I mean, a lot more, I think. Overall, a fine, nice job well done of a movie. Just couldn't quite stick the landing for me, I think, ultimately. But that's my main thoughts. I'm going to give The Boogeyman a 6.5 out of 10. I think this movie would have actually been a lower for me if it didn't have such a good first half for me. I mean, this movie was genuinely scared me. I just wish it had stuck landing a little more through the second half. But what are your guys' thoughts? Have you had a chance to maybe see this movie already? And if you haven't, are you planning on seeing it? Do you give a shit at all? What do you think? Leave a comment down below. And also hit that like button if you enjoyed this video as well. And hit that subscribe button if this is your first time watching any of my videos, or if you're a returning viewer. Any support for this channel, as always, is very much appreciated. Still trying to grow this channel out. Just a small little channel started last year. I just love talking about movies and TV shows. It's my passion. So again, I appreciate all the support very much. You can also follow me on TikTok and add me on Snapchat, where I will post content similar to this. But for the most part, my content will be here on this YouTube channel. As always, not your average Josh. So again, I appreciate all the support. Be looking for more videos very soon. I will talk to you guys later.